So, big weekend of racing. A lot of things happened that I think you guys want me to talk about, so I will be doing that in this video. I will be talking about IndyCar racing. Jimmie Johnson took his first laps on an oval yesterday, so I will be breaking all of that down. There's some interesting things to talk about in relation to that and where Jimmie is on potentially running the Indy 500 next year. There was the NASCAR race in Daytona. I don't know if you know this, but I was down there. There was a big YouTuber meetup. I met all the NASCAR YouTubers. I want to talk a little bit about that event and some things about what I was actually doing down there and some setup for potential coverage in the future of the Cup Series. And finally, Formula One. They laid an egg this weekend, and I'm just going to say it. This is the worst, probably worse, honestly, because there really wasn't a race, than Indy 2005. And I'm going to lay the hammer down on Formula One in this video. But first, I want to introduce to you guys my delicious sponsor. This video is brought to you today by HelloFresh. I don't know if you guys noticed, but it is hot outside right now, like really hot. Like I don't want to turn on the oven and cook a delicious meal hot. That's a huge problem because you should always be able to enjoy a delicious meal. Not to worry, HelloFresh has come up with a solution to oven heat fatigue with their new Taste of Summer series. With everything from delicious grilled mains to farm fresh sides, each dish is designed to maximize the flavors of the season while minimizing oven use. You guys know I love the HelloFresh meals because not only are they extremely tasty, but they are also fast. I can have a meal ready in just about 30 minutes. HelloFresh makes it so easy with their pre-portioned ingredients, which means less prep work and less wasted food afterwards. Go to HelloFresh.com and use code LAND14 to get 14 free meals plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com and use the code in the description, LAND14, to get 14 free meals plus free shipping. Boy, I'm feeling kind of hungry. Hope you are too. Remember those 14 free meals. But the first thing I want to talk about is NASCAR and Daytona. So I made a late call to go to Daytona for the Coke Zero Sugar 400 or whatever they call it now. During the Indianapolis weekend, I got to meet a lot of the NASCAR YouTubers. I got to meet the Iceberg, I got to meet Black Flags Matter, got to meet Eric Estep, all of them in person. And I showed them around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, introduced them to a bunch of people, tried to get them integrated into potentially covering not only things at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in an official capacity in the future, but also the IndyCar series in the future. I felt that was my obligation as a representative of motorsport racing on YouTube to show off some other folks who do this. And I think, you've probably already seen Estep's video on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. I think they really were receptive to it. So they were really like, hey, David, you should come to Daytona. And they listed off all these people. I mean, there were literally too many YouTubers to list in this video at Daytona. And they said, you should really come. And I thought about it for a second. And I was on the fence because I, as you guys know, had been on the road for 3 weeks at that point. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to go. I'm going to make it a fourth week at a racetrack, but I'm not going to cover it in the same way that I would normally cover a race. I really was going, number one, to network with a lot of these YouTubers. I mean, some of these people I've spoken with for months and months and months and maybe even years online, but never actually met in person. So it was kind of cool to set up some future collaborations and things like that. And my number two goal was to kind of get a lay of the land of what a NASCAR weekend at Daytona is like, because, of course, the NASCAR season supposedly will start at Daytona for the Daytona 500. And I'm absolutely planning on being there all of Speed Weeks to cover the event in 2022. So was doing that, and I think it was a very positive weekend. I actually had a lot of fun, and part of that was due to the race. So I'm going to talk about the race because I think that it's unfortunate in some ways, because I think NASCAR kind of finally nailed the plate package for the Generation 6 car in its last race on a super speedway. Them's the breaks. But I will say that I went into this weekend a little bit apprehensive, as I'm sure a lot of you guys do with the super speedway races is just like, God, I hope nobody gets hurt, because obviously we know that there are big crashes in every race, and especially at Daytona, we've seen some pretty horrific ones at the end of the races. This was a pretty safe race. I mean, obviously there were the big ones, but my big wish, and the YouTubers will be able to verify this, is that, I was like, I told everybody all weekend, I'm like, I just want a majority of the cars to get to the final stage, and then let's let calamity happen as it always does. But I want to see a race. You don't want to see what happened in February, where you have a lap 14 pileup and the race sucks. Which was crazy, because the times that they did end up training, the debris came down from the stands, got in the leader's grill, and usually broke up the pack, or perhaps got the pack to spread out again and actually start passing each other. In fact, I thought I saw a stat that said this was the most lead changes at a Daytona race in ages, like something like 45 lead changes. So it was an exciting race to watch, and I hope it translated on TV. Sometimes I think the TV partners sometimes miss a lot of what you see on when you're actually there in person. Joey Logano was dominant. I really think Joey Logano probably in a perfect world would have won the race, but ultimately he got a flat tire and was eliminated from contention. Ironically enough, a strategy call actually really, I think, won the race for Ryan Blaney, and that was the call that the Fords all short pitted. They went in early in the final stage, where you theoretically, if there are no cautions, or at least cautions towards the end like there were in this race, a green flag pit stop can be made and be advantageous. They undercut the field. The Fords were all up at the front, out of the action on the final 10-lap couple of restarts, and after the Rick Ware calamity, that was funny. But when the wrecks were all happening, it was taking out Chevys and Toyotas rather than taking out the Fords, and you had enough Fords bracing the front that when you finally got guys like Corey LaJoie, who had a great run up to that point, and Bubba Wallace and Daniel Suarez actually being able to kind of challenge up at the front, they weren't able to get there, because then they all wrecked with Harvick and Kurt Busch and all them. Good win for Blaney. Ironically enough, the playoff battle didn't really play out, I think, the way a lot of people thought. I thought there was going to be a crazy winner, and there very well nearly was with Suarez, but I think it played out pretty much the way everybody expected. It was Larson winning the regular season championship, which is why I think he wasn't very aggressive in the race. I think you get 15 playoff points if you can win the regular season championship. So he was very conservative and still got wrecked at the end anyway. You had Tyler Reddick, I think, was the great story, because he crashed his car and still managed to not only finish the race, but get into the playoffs. You didn't have Bubba Wallace win, though he got very close after the disqualification of Chris Buescher. Second place. And I will say that from a Bubba perspective, and I'm looking forward to February on this one, which I think will be the next real big opportunity for Bubba, is that he's very good at Daytona, and it looks like he's finally figured out how to get to the front and not throw a lot of those crazy blocks that we've kind of come to be accustomed to with him. So I would look, as long as 2311 with the new addition of Kurt Busch is strong, that I would say that 2311 is probably going to be really strong come February. But again, I was sitting there. I mean, it was one of those moments where I'm sitting in the stands surrounded by Eric Estep and Urinating Tree and 5 Points and Slap Shoes, and I'm just thinking, well, how am I here right now? And I'm watching the race with all these people. Trust me, that was an amazing experience, to have that many people that passionate about the sport and of sports in general to watch a race with. It was a great experience, and I can't wait for more NASCAR YouTube action. Okay, Jimmie Johnson finally had his oval test. It was at Texas Motor Speedway. We had previously heard that he was going to run Homestead, Miami. In fact, he had told us that in a Zoom meeting. Then eventually I asked him about it in Indianapolis. He confirmed that it was going to move to Texas. The reason for that, I later found out, not from Jimmie, but from another source, is that Homestead, Miami was originally going to be on the 2022 IndyCar schedule and has since not been knocked off for whatever reason. So Homestead will not be on the 2022 IndyCar schedule, and thus they moved to Texas, which will be on the 2022 IndyCar schedule. So, Jimmie was doing 214 mile per hour laps, which I think was reported by Dave First of IndyCar, would have put him like fourth on the grid for the 2020 race. Obviously, 214 miles an hour average around Texas. The new Texas is quite good, so I think that's very exciting. They did a bit of a weird thing where they started at 6 in the morning, essentially night, and went into the early afternoon. So it was a bit of a different test day, but I was unfortunately unable to attend the press conference today where Jimmie Johnson actually discussed this in detail. I've actually been continuing to work on my house. I had some flooring laid in this house at the time of the press conference, so I was unable to make it. But a key quote was aggregated by Nathan Brown of the Indianapolis Star, so I want to read this to you because it comes from Jimmie. And he says, I'm definitely a step closer. I think there's more conversations to be had with my family, team sponsors, and there's at least another test session before I'll really make a decision. So we're talking Jimmie potentially going to the Indianapolis 500. Again, I've talked to Jimmie a couple of times at this point. All indications from him at this time seem to be moving towards an Indy 500 run, possibly another oval, just to get prepared if there is one in the early season, but not a full season. The reason for that is a lack of crew members, to my understanding. In fact, I heard this from someone who's not associated with the Jimmie Johnson camp, but one of the reasons we're not going to see 30 cars next year is not because of a lack of interest. We're probably going to see around 27, 28 for the full season, and that's because there just simply aren't enough people who are trained to work on Indy cars to fill out the grid as currently would be. IndyCar is oversubscribed right now, which is a good thing. But I think even for a team like Ganassi, it's tough to put together a fifth or sixth full-time car. They might be able to do it for the 500. They might be able to do it for a couple of extra races, but not for the full season. Jimmie also indicated that he is not going to be done with IndyCar if he has anything to say about it at the end of his first 2-year run. He seems to be committed to staying in this series for the long haul. And I think the reasoning for that, and I've kind of identified this a while. I don't know if I've said it specifically in a video, but I know I've said it to friends who I've talked about Jimmie with. And I believe that Jimmie Johnson, I look at it as once he gets to the end of the second year, I think he will have figured it out. It's obvious from the Indianapolis road course race that the more seat time Jimmie has at a track, the better he gets. Therefore, logically, by the end of his second season and the end of his first contract with Chip Ganassi Racing, he will be acclimatized to Indy cars and he will be competitive. If he gets competitive right at the end of the second season, do you think he's going to stop? I don't think so. I think he's very competitive, and I think he will continue in this series probably into his 50s, believe it or not. So I think that's very exciting. I like the fact that Jimmie's committed to this series. Yes, I know the memes are funny, and I've made memes in the past, but this series is better with Jimmie Johnson in it. Would there be an extra car at Ganassi if Jimmie Johnson wasn't there? I don't think so. So I think a lot of people who criticize Jimmie are coming at it from the wrong angle and in some ways not really understanding how monumental his task is. I see the improvement. I believe he'll prove his 7-time NASCAR Cup Series championships are not a fluke in IndyCar. It's just going to take time, and I do believe he's going to be super competitive when it gets to the oval tracks. And finally, gonna end this video with a little bit of anger. Gonna keep it fairly short. Don't want to rant for too long, but Formula One, if you don't know, last weekend supposedly ran a race, but they didn't. Spa-Francorchamps obviously has been the subject of a lot of controversy in the last couple of years, and rightfully so. Obviously, Antoine Hubert was lost there 2 years ago in a terrifying fatal accident at the Raidillon Eau Rouge complex of corners, the most famous corners on the circuit. It was raining heavily at Spa, and I know a lot of people would also be thinking of Jules Bianchi, who was killed in similar monsoon-like conditions in Japan in Formula One. So rightfully so, and I don't want to say that they weren't rightfully so, F1 was cautious to get the race underway. They ran a lap under safety car, decided it was too wet to continue, brought the cars in for a red flag. Then there was, I think, like a 3 or 4 hour wait. They brought the cars back out, ran 2 more laps, brought the cars in under the red flag conditions, and called the race. and then awarded half points for the race, treating it as though a Grand Prix had happened when really only 2 laps had been completed under the safety car. I said at the beginning, this is an absolute farce. The biggest farce since Indianapolis 2005 with the tire controversy. And to me, from a purist standpoint, perhaps not from a historical ramification standpoint, I think I would agree that historical ramifications-wise, Indy 2005 was much worse for Formula One. But from a pure racing standpoint, this was the worst, perhaps, performance Formula One has ever had. The fact that they did not put on a race whatsoever is just unacceptable. At the very least, at Indy 2005, you had a 6-car race. You had a 0-car race. You had 20 F1 cars parade behind the safety car for 2 laps after making the fans, the loyal fans in Belgium of Formula One, of which, Spa is one of the cornerstone events on your calendar, one of the most fan favorites, the one that people under normal circumstances would travel thousands of miles and spend thousands of dollars to see. And you gave them a 2-lap safety car fest and called it a Grand Prix and didn't make any effort to come back later, didn't postpone the race. I don't want to be so crass as to say, you should have nut up and raced because they would have done that in the 60s. I understand that, some risks that we would have taken in the past are unable to be taken now. I understand that. The fact that a contingency plan to give the fans a race was not concocted, and they did this absolute farce instead and pretended like it was legitimate, I don't know what else to say. I think it's ridiculous. I think the fans should be refunded. I think I completely agree with Lewis Hamilton and several others who have stated that. I think the FIA should refund them, by the way. Definitely not Spa-Francorchamps, because it's not their fault that the FIA decided that they didn't want to run a race given the conditions and didn't want to give the fans any kind of a show. I mean, ultimately, I don't believe that racing, should cater to be entertainment. The entertainment is the race. And if you don't give the fans the race, therefore you have not given them the entertainment that they paid for. Ridiculous. The last thing I'd like to mention while I'm on the subject of Spa is that Eau Rouge Raidillon complex of corners at Spa. I think a lot of people, again, I don't fault them for feeling terrible that Antoine Hubert got killed at that corner a couple of years ago and feelings of, oh my God, it's going to happen again. For example, like the W Series pileup or seeing Lando Norris crash in qualifying. And I don't even want to say that you can't make safety changes to that corner, particularly with the barriers and the angles that cars shoot back up across the track. But I think a lot of people have forgotten what makes Spa, and particularly Eau Rouge and Raidillon, such fan favorites. It's always been a dangerous corner. It's never not been a dangerous corner. Probably even in 1994 when they put a chicane there, it was dangerous. I don't believe in taking stupid risks in racing. However, racing is inherently risky. The fan favorite aspect of Spa is because it is old school, and therefore, by definition, it's going to be dangerous. It's going to be high speed. And potentially, when you go high speed through a corner, you have a potential of a high-speed collision. What needs to change are the angles in which the cars are crashing. And I don't know how that can be achieved. But some of the suggestions to put a chicane back in Eau Rouge or to slow the corner down or change the profile, that happened after Imola 1994. And what you got were Herman Tilke tracks. And these are the things that everybody complains about. And yet, we are advocating for a return to Herman Tilke's style of tracks. I don't understand that. In fact, the other thing I don't understand on the safety subject are kind of the activist accounts, going to bat for the big bad FIA corporation because supposedly, well, there's nothing they could have done because my safety. They couldn't have gone back another time and raced at Spa because of safety. There was to pretend like the only solution was to cancel the race and not come back is asinine to me. It annoys me a great deal when racing fans are not taken care of and not appreciated. And they were definitely not taken care of and definitely not appreciated by the FIA and Formula One. And I hope that the rules change to give the fans a racing show, because, ultimately you can try to change the business model of racing all you want. You can try to only make it about the sponsors and the suites. But as far as I'm concerned, the people who make racing happen are the people who pay the damn ticket prices. And you didn't take care of those people. And if you don't take care of those people and you treat them like dirt, eventually they'll find something else to do with their hard-earned time and money. I hope they learn their lesson. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for more and buy some HelloFresh.